Good morning, afternoon, and evening, everyone. Welcome to Karate Without Belts. I'm John. I'm joined again by the wonderful and only Jeremy.
Yeah. Good morning, afternoon, and night. Good deal.
Yeah, good night. That's for sure. How have you been, Jeremy?
I've been very busy, but that's all good. So it's all good.
Yeah, I can concur. Been trying to get up and been having more of the morning owl effect, where it's like I'll wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and be like, "Ha! Sun's not up yet. Now we can train."
That's cool.
Because once the sun comes up, nope, you're not going outside.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I know how that is. It's about 100 degrees here and 100% humidity half the time. So it's been kind of miserable lately, but that's cool.
You don't even have the benefit of an ocean breeze.
No.
So it's been the typhoon. I think it was Typhoon Duras or Dallas, whatever has been blowing through here. But we've barely caught any rain from it. But just because of the proximity, the wind has knocked out both air and sea travel for like the last 3 or 4 days.
Mm.
So no mail, no supplies. The stores are starting to run barren. Waiting for it to turn into Cannibal Island, but thankfully that stopped today.
Well, that's good. That's positive.
It's always a positive not to turn into the Donner Party.
Yeah.
We've had some pretty good feedback from our last podcast. So much so that we might tempt Marty back.
Oh, cool. Very cool.
As we were saying before the show, that could either turn into the Three Stooges or the Three Amigos.
Yeah, that's true.
Which,
Very
if
true.
we turn into the Three Amigos, I want it to turn into what's that movie? What's the guy who's had like silver hair since he was 25?
Oh,
Yeah, we're gonna be wondering who this is for a while.
yeah. Oh, I'll wake up about 3 o'clock in the morning and I'll remember it. It's like, all right.
Those Three Amigos would be good. But
Yeah.
what we were kind of talking about was last time was about kata and memory and videotaping. I was actually looking at a videotape of Jeremy doing a kata right before we got on. Um, so if anyone wants to call out and be like, "You're a hypocrite," I'm like, "Well, that's not the conclusion we came to last time. That videotaping's fine, but there's some limits to it that we need to understand." Some people, somebody was like, "Videotapes are fine," and I was like, "Yeah, we didn't say videotaping was bad." So to kind of clarify from last time. So it's the unfortunates of nuance with the internet these days is that you might make a nuanced point, but people will only hear what they want to hear and get angry about what they want to get angry about.
Yeah. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about on that. So,
So, the reason why we are not a video, but we are an audio podcast is that exact reason. So please listen. Don't just get angry from what you hear. Try to kind of listen through what we're trying to say, I suppose. Which today we might also be drawing some controversy, but I doubt that. So, Jeremy, how many katas do we think we actually know?
jeez. No or done. That's a difference. I know after after our last conversation, I started counting up because I'd forgotten how many I knew. Um, I At one time I knew 14 empty hand and right at 20 weapons kata.
So, like, totaling to a grand total of 34?
Yeah, at one time I knew that, but there are certain ones that I've forgotten and I'm okay with. So
Yeah, that comes to our particular lineage having I don't say the kata is becoming created, but the kata is being tooled with and tweaked with, which is unique, I think, to what we do as opposed to I think other styles, which pretty much like this is the way they did it, this is the way we do it, this is the way it will be done.
Right.
Um, but unfortunately, that has also caused a little confusion.
Right.
Regardless,
It's caused a lot of confusion. Yes, I get it.
yeah. But regardless of that, one thing we've touched on here before, and I kind of want to get into tonight is or today is whether or not is one kata enough, and it is three kata enough, is five kata enough. How like is one kata consistent of a fighting system? Is it enough for you to break down and work with? Are there other things that need to be done around it? What consists of that? Especially nowadays where we can actually have access to a lot of different katas and forms and stuff like that, a variety of styles. Kind of is one enough?
I
So
I think I I think I'm gonna give kind of a cop out answer and say it just depends. It depends on what you're doing with those kata and a kata in particular. If if you're using the one kata to break things up, change things up, look at different things, look at it from different points of view, things like that, then technically, yes, one kata can be used as a complete system. But sometimes you need to see things from a different point of view, and I think that's where other katas come in. If that makes sense, or that's my take on it. I mean,
right,
somebody could say I'm completely nuts too, but and I'm fine with that. But
well,
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I agree. I agree with that because it goes back to what you were saying before. Kata's practiced or kata's done. Were you at like a seminar or somebody else's school or another class just walking through a kata, and then just kind of you walked out the next day didn't remember it, or is it just from your experience of seeing that, or seeing the kata done in a different way?
Yeah,
Right.
and the from what I mentioned before with the 20 weapons katas, which that, that's a lot.
Yeah,
Um,
it's not even the
yeah,
same weapon. I'm assuming.
yeah, oh no, I mean it's definitely different weapons, and as I mentioned before, I do not know 20 katas, weapons katas today, but I will say this: there were certain techniques from those weapons that I've taken out, and sometimes I'll insert them into a base kata of whatever. Like one one in particular um, was one of the bow kata. There was one movement where you completely torqued your body. I mean, you went from one going from one complete 180 and then whipping it around to the other 180. I mean, it was really a dynamic move. Now, do I remember that kata? No. Do I use that technique or a variation of that to enhance other techniques? Absolutely. I mean, I think it would not. I think I would not be doing techniques or helping my other techniques if I didn't take into account certain things that work well with me and work well for me to actually enhance techniques as a whole. So,
And I think that goes into, that's something you actually learned from that kata, as
Right.
opposed to just having memorized it, but never having actually picked up something of use from it.
Right. I
Um,
mean, I'm not looking at a kata for a checklist to get a belt or anything like that. I'm looking at a kata like, when am I going to enhance what I can do?
do you think that could just come from taking one kata and just doing that one kata for most, if not all, of your martial arts career? Or do you think there would need to be other things in place prior or after that?
I I truly think it's what your emphasis is on training. Um, because I look at, you know, over almost the 30 years of me training, and I look at what my first instructor drilled into me, like, look, you train as if you're going to use this every moment of every day, every time. Boom, 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 boom. And I mean, it was like start a class, he'd remind us every day, every day. And it it comes out very differently. And I remember going to New Zealand, and it was funny. We were up in front of everybody doing Nanchi Shodan, just the very first kata. And I was kind of standing in the back because I tend to really concentrate on certain things, and there are certain things, once I see it, I'll move a certain way, or something, just something a little different. And it was funny, my host family from down there, he takes me back on the back deck, which was really one of the highlights of my trip down there. He gives me a Heineken, and he goes, I have to ask you a question. And I'm like, what's that? And he said, why do you do this stuff differently than everybody else? And I was trying to, I feel kind of bad because I was kind of blowing him up. No, I'm doing the same thing. I really didn't. I was hoping that I wasn't too flagrant on it. And he goes, no, your movements are the same, but there's something different that you're doing. And he goes, what is it? And so I explained to him, it's like, well, this is it. I'm very intentional whenever I'm doing kata. And I'm thinking about kata. I'm trying not to think about doing a demo in front of a couple hundred people, or this or that or anything else. I'm really thinking about what the kata is doing, what I'm trying to get out of it, and things like that. And it was just a very different answer. And we spent probably a good hour just on that discussion on,
mm-hmm.
How do you get the most out of kata? And and sometimes, no matter how much you explain to somebody, they don't get it, and that's okay. That I'm not critical of somebody that doesn't get it, but I mean, sometimes if you're teaching them, it's kind of frustrating because you want them to get it, but they don't, and it's okay.
Well, I think that's also goes into someone seeing uh, you or whoever else doing a kata, or doing some sort of martial arts technique, kind of that, and kind of, I don't want to say wandering eye, but just being like, wait, what are they doing different than I'm doing? That looks so different. And I don't think that there's anything movement wise is probably any different than what they were doing, right?
Right, right. I mean, there might have been like maybe a simple twist of a hand because it's just been something that was ingrained in me, or something real simple. But I mean, my focus wasn't just doing a kata. It was like, okay, what technique am I thinking about when I'm doing this part? What technique am I thinking about doing this part? Am I doing the kata for analysis, or am I doing it for just a certain set bunch of techniques that I've already done time and time again?
And I think that's where I think a lot of people, that's a stage where I think a lot of people want to get to, but hold themselves back from actually embracing, because with the checklist kata mentality a lot of people have, or the belt rank climbing mentality people have, or the move on to the next one mentality a lot of people have, they don't want to take the time to actually like look at the kata to see what it does. And this what got me thinking about, is one all you need? Is one the only one worth spending time on? I mean, you and me spent particularly a lot of time on one particular sai kata that is kind of a giant in its own right.
Right.
And it's hard for people to where we kind of came to a conclusion at one point where it's like, we're doing something wrong here. Um, could we have come to that conclusion without having taken that step back? Um, would it have been worth it to do that? Is it worth it to even teach that, with a lot of people's mentality just moving on to the next one, or checklist, got the kata? Um, or does every class need to be prefaced with, every practice needs to be prefaced with, this is how we're going to go about the kata. This is how we're going to go about practice.
Well, I, 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 I think I think it comes from the instructor who's teaching, because if that instructor, while the person's gaining skill and gaining confidence and really starting to understand, if they don't have the right mindset, they may never have the right mindset.
Mm.
Um, there's one in particular. Um, I won't mention this person's name, but they were a part of our old organization, and they had a hard time trying to relate these set of movements into actual techniques. And when you go to show them a technique, like, okay, this can be used for this, or it can be used for this, or it can be used for this, these are several different things. And when they would go to do the technique, it was almost like, well, I've done the kata, therefore the technique should always come out. Well, no, that's not the case. I'm sorry, and I'm really not picking on him, but I think that was at fault at how they set that student up. I wouldn't say they set him up for failure, because they understood a lot, but they didn't understand how to apply it.
I think that's what goes into. I think that's an old mentality, is that you will do the kata and suddenly it will come out, and you will magically be able to defend yourself and to beat down the guy with long hair from Karate Kid 3.
Yeah, I'd say that's bovine scatology, as I like to call it.
Yeah.
I mean, if you cannot do that, and you can't fit, one of the things, like I mentioned from my lesson from Mr. Oyata, as he mentioned, he had a certain way of doing techniques. Absolutely, you better believe he had a way of doing techniques better than anybody. I mean, he was amazing. But you have to fit, and that goes back to what I was talking about, how I'm trying to break down techniques into kind of like a paragraph structure: an introduction, the actual technique, and a close.
Right.
And I've heard a lot of people talk over the years like, you can't do these techniques. Well, Yeah, some dumb goombah's not going to come up there and perfectly push you or perfectly throw a punch. That's not going to happen. You got to figure out the little idiosyncrasies or the what can you do to make that work, or what can you do to make that person go off balance, or what's going to be a natural tendency that you're going to use.
Right.
I mean, if
I
that
think
if that makes sense. I mean,
no, it does, and I think it's weird to hear a story about what a lot of people say is a classical Okinawan martial arts master to basically come out and say you got to figure it out for yourself.
yeah,
I think a lot of people, I don't want to be like all these people, but like more the common mentality, the common sensibility within a lot of American trained Okinawan or traditional martial artists is that you got to do it the way other people were doing it from before, blah 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 blah, without understanding people adapted this. Anyone who saw any sort of martial art adapted it to fit their needs. And what I think where people are getting left behind in training is that they're not adapting
exactly.
to fit their needs. And it's not the needs at the time. Like it's a punch hasn't changed in a thousand years. How someone throws a punch is different and different every time.
Right.
Um, but then it gets into the kind of the other part of what I wanted to talk about was like, all right, so we have kata and all these techniques that can come out of kata, so we can analyze them and we can grab as much as we need to or as much as we want. Um, some might say that's overanalyzing, whatever. Now goes to the physical aspect of it.
Hmm.
How is that? Then how are those techniques practiced? Are we practicing blind? Are we practicing with three opponents? Are we practicing with coming at all different sides? Is there variation within the training? Is that needed or is that not needed? So,
I I think it gets back to the old the old answer of it just depends. I think
right,
each person's different. So I think some people have got a higher capacity to analyze things than other people do, and that's okay. And that's totally cool, and I get it. Um, I I,
you,
I, I totally get that. But I think I think where everybody gets stuck in the mud, as I like to call it, is even they're shown these techniques, but they don't know how to make them personal. It's kind of like one of the examples. I know you've heard me mention this example. I go back to music. There are certain artists when they come on the radio or come on Sirius XM or wherever, you don't have to know, you don't have to see who it is. You can just listen to them and you know who it is. Like if Def Leppard's playing, you know that's a Def Leppard song. You don't have to, or a Van Halen, or I was like classical rock. I mean, even if you go back to
there's very much of a classical rock plug in this podcast.
yeah. Um, but I mean, even if you go back to classical music, you can hear very distinct differences between Mozart, Tchaikovsky, Beethoven. There are certain things you hear and you know that's something from Tchaikovsky. And 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 I think that's where a lot of people get misconstrued, where like some people have said, well, it's all in the writing. Well, that's an example. You have to make it your own.
Right. So, I mean, to go with the musical analogy, is everyone who's using a particular kata. Um, we can kind of go outside the family a little and say like Goju Shiho or Chinto,
Right.
or Naihachi or Kusanku. I'm kind of thinking of the ones that are generally considered longer. You know, could you just use that alone, and then would you have a million covers of the same song or essentially the same kata to get at what you wanted? They're all essentially written the same,
Right.
but they're all going to have their own variation to it.
Right.
So the the difficulty of making a defense technique work for you is already, I think, a hurdle. This is here something I hear a lot. Where I don't know if you hear this a lot, where it's like, boxers and MMA people. Forget them. They're all just, they're just punch, kick, block. We've got the real stuff. We know how to do a technique.
Right.
That's kind of set around people who don't do those things. But once you get somebody who actually can do that stuff in the same room, are those people going to be as shy? I mean, I wouldn't ever say that around someone who's a professional boxer. I would want to kind of test out what I could do.
Right. Well,
But
I think it goes back to something I mentioned on the last podcast, and it's like, I think they see these people when we've talked about this as, oh yeah, kata is just an exercise. No, it's not just an exercise, and it's more in depth than just, okay, this is elbow smash to jaw and you drop them. Maybe not. Maybe that's one level. Maybe there's a deeper level. Maybe there's something else. It it gets back into analysis, and in some ways, good for these guys that are in boxing, Muay Thai, MMA. I mean, I think they've called a lot of people out that were complete phonies. I mean, you've got you've got like there's a school in the Kansas City area, and and it's I'm obviously not going to mention them by name. That's not cool. I wouldn't do that. But
no, we're
one
not a
of
part of Kalai culture here. So
yeah, I mean, it's it it's a Korean based martial arts school, but the guy's wearing a Japanese hakama, and I'm like, that's kind of okay, that's kind of a culture clash, but okay, whatever, hey, if it works for you, cool. But it, it gets into this. I think it gets off into like a checklist style martial arts school. Oh, you can accomplish this and you can accomplish that, and just mark off the checklist. Yay, get whatever. No, okay, great. You've got this checklist, but what can you do? And I think that's the main question. A lot of these guys are great. You've got a 50th degree black belt. What can you do? Can you do anything? Or are you worthless? And I think they're pulling some of that out. I mean, I think a lot of people are starting to see who are a lot of phonies. So,
well, and this is somewhat historical because you have the great Musashi references of him going around taking out people who were, you know when rank was more about a matter of family and
right,
just kind of becoming inherited. So yeah, I think it's just kind of the cult, the I don't want to say zeitgeist, but just more like kind of where we are in history, and especially within American culture, where uh, I'm working on an essay about this now, but where it's appropriation to the point of ridiculousness, where people are taking stuff from and blending stuff from different cultures that aren't theirs, and then passing them off to people who are also ignorant, and then now you've got this kind of ignorance on top of ignorance
hmm
being marketed as authenticity. And what do you do about that? And so and there's a kind way of doing it, and there's a mean way of doing it, and I would encourage most people, in fact, all people, to be kind about that. I think it's, I totally 100% think it's okay to walk into someone's school and say, I would like to test what I know with what you know. I think that's fine. It doesn't need to be done publicly. There doesn't need to be any video of it. Um, People can learn from that.
Right.
But if you're kind of going to go walk in there and being like, I'm from Extreme Studios of Martial Arts, and we're gonna beat you up and tail all your students. No. I hope that died in the '80s, but um, you know
Well,
what I mean. Like I feel like that's respectful and appropriate. So
well, I, I mean, one of the things that I do, I mean, like if friends of mine are like, "Hey, I'm kind of looking to, go to this school, send my kids to this school, what do you know about it?" I'm like, "Well, I'll tell you what, I'll go talk to the instructor and see what I think." And usually, what I'll do, I don't know, this is very nice, but I'll go in, just in work clothes and just, with my little pocket protector, and really, I look like I don't know a hill of beans,
wait,
and
pocket protectors are
it,
still a thing.
huh?
Pocket protectors are still a thing.
You forget I'm an engineer. Yeah, they're still a thing. Trust me.
Because I
Uh,
could have used one because I ruined a perfectly good shirt without one. So,
well, I'll look for one for you, John. All right. So, so, but I mean, and basically, what I'll do is I'll just go in and just really quiz the person, and see what their attitude really is. If it's inviting for a family environment, or if it's kind of a pompous jerk, I'm like, all right, if you want to turn the jerk phase on, I'll be a jerk right back to you. And I've done that a couple times. I don't like doing that, but I just try to get a feel how they're going to be, and especially for kids and stuff, it's like not not so much. Oh, they have to know extreme. Da, da, da. No, they don't. They need they need guidance. They need somebody who's going to be, really pretty supportive of them. Not so much somebody who's just going to take money from them either. But
well, and I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, teaching fundamentals are important, but also just like the rampant, take money because student has walked in door, um, without really teaching them anything. I get people want to run businesses, but there's a certain point where it just that is a big turn off for me.
well, I mean, one of the instructors I knew, and him and I were really pretty good friends, and really he was really pretty good instructor. It was just one of the things that was fundamentally both of us disagreed on, and he would talk about, yeah, after the first 30 days he would present them with a possible 3-year contract. I mean, and I told him, one of my arguments was, okay, you're talking about a 6 or 7 year old signing a 3-year contract, with the parents. No, they're not
That's
gonna.
nuts.
Yeah, I mean, I look at my 6 and 8 year old, and it, I mean, they change their mind more than a gnat. I mean, they're oh well, hey, this is great. Hey, there's a butterfly. It's like, holy cow. I mean, I can't keep up. I can't keep track of them. How do you expect a kid, after 30 days to make a commitment of 3 years? And and one of the things that he would mention was, if the parents aren't smart enough and they're not this, then you know what? It's on them. And I that was just one things that him and I totally disagreed on. I get running a business, I get all that, but I always thought that wasn't right. So that's me.
Yeah. Well, let's try to bring it back down to
Oh,
this is a good conversation. No.
sorry, I squirrel.
No,
Okay, I kind of went off track a little bit, but
no, I mean that's a I feel that that's a good basis for a conversation for a different time.
I
But
got you. Sorry.
we'll put a pin. We'll put a pin in that because that's a good one to come back to. I've not wanted to hit the head on that quite yet. But yeah, what were we talking about? Kata.
Yeah. So
Well, we were just here's the other thing. Could you learn one kata and then have a basis of other things around that, surrounding that, right? Like if you never had to learn anything else, but for example, like Kusanku,
okay.
Konku Dai for our Shotokan friends,
Okay.
um, right? But then let's say, like, is that the only thing you ever learn? Would you not learn the basic kick punch block? Um, could you learn knife technique? Could you learn that around that? Could you break Kusanku into 50 different drills? And then bam, you have a complete fighting system? Or would you
Well,
need or what else would we need to kind of build around that?
or could
Just
you,
as an example.
or add into that analysis? Could you add drills and kicks, punches, blocks, footwork, different things like that into incorporate into Kusanku?
Right.
I mean, kind of look at it from a little bit different angle, not just Kusanku's a center, but let's say Kusanku is kind of your goal.
Mm. So you would build everything up from the top of Kusanku to the end of Kusanku.
Right.
Whereas like white belt to black belt, to use an example, would just essentially be the beginning of Kusanku, and black belt would be the end of Kusanku,
Yeah, and I
or
think
the completion of it.
right. And I think there would have to be some type of freedom for analysis to do that. And what I mean by that, you'd have to give each student to really learn what they were about. They'd have to learn themselves. They'd have to learn about themselves. I mean, one of the great quotes, and I can't remember where I heard it, was the toughest thing to be is to be yourself. And until you can figure out who you are, and maybe it's through the study of one kata, maybe it's this, maybe it's through karate or kata or whatever. Who knows? But just being yourself is tough enough, you know. And I think you got to know that in order to do something like that. Well, I mean, really, you need to do that anyway, no matter how many kata you've got.
Right, one's enough.
Right.
And there's what is it? I mean, that's a I think that's a recurring theme through most disciplines of just the human arts, as it were.
Mhm.
Where it's like most athletes will just need to. There's always that stereotypical, athlete looking in the mirror montage in any sort of sports movie,
Yeah.
but it's true that at the end of the day, you've got to look at yourself in the mirror, and I think each practice is kind of that mirror. That doing a kata, even though it was created by somebody else, at the end of the day, when you are working on it, you are looking kind of you. That is kind of a reflection pool for you to work from.
Right. Right. Well, absolutely. And that goes back to one of the conversations that I had with Mr. Oyata, back in Okinawa. And I don't know if I might have told you about this one. One of those days that we sat down and ate breakfast and stuff, and we were just talking about a lot of different things, and then he always liked to do this, just throw something just straight out of the blue at you, like, huh? And he says, as you get older, you know what secret self-defense is? And, and I didn't know what to expect from him. I'm like, no, what's that? And he said, it's to be able to give yourself enough time to do what you need to do to make things happen the way you want them.
Right.
And
there's a mic drop moment for you.
huh?
That's a mic drop moment.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you're like, okay. And what was interesting, I don't know if I've ever told you about this story, but I'll go ahead and tell you about this story. So a few years later, it was actually right after I just gotten diagnosed with cancer, and I'll never forget it because it was literally the week I was getting ready to go into surgery, like the next day or two or whatever, and it was, for some reason, everything happened on a cold day here in Missouri for some reason to me. But I'm at a gas station, and it's real interesting. Some guy was pulling into the gas station, and just I don't know, I don't know if it was my just spidey senses or whatever. It was like,
His Jeremy sense went off.
yeah, I don't know. It's just like, okay, I need to pay attention to this guy. I don't know why, but just something just doesn't seem quite right. And I was noticing just little things about the guy, and I'm like, something just doesn't seem right. But anyway, so we're in the convenience store, and I'm getting ready to pay for gas, and and I'm standing right next to the guy, and the guy is getting ready to pull out a gun. I mean, he had the handle out, and it was coming out of his shirt. He was getting ready to try to rob the place. And I look back on this, and this is one of those things that I ask people, is like, well, what would you do in that situation? You see just this, and mind you, it was interesting because the position I had on the guy, I mean, it was like the perfect shot to his neck. I mean, there is no doubt I could have just nailed the guy.
And you were what, 6'2"?
Huh?
You were what, 6'2"?
No. I mean, I could have knocked the guy out. No, I mean, no problem. I mean,
But
what's that?
You're about 6'2". You're about 6'2", right?
No, I'm right at 6.
Really?
Yeah.
But you've got a, for people who clearly, again, audio, Jeremy's got a long reach. Like,
Yeah.
even though this is where our body types are actually similar, where I'm like weirdly like small in the middle, but like legs and arms are weirdly lanky. You and me actually have the kind of the same body type in that way.
Yeah.
But you had to reach on this guy.
Oh, I was close enough. I could have hit him in the neck with my elbow. I mean, that's how close I was. I mean, just to give you a kind of context.
Right.
And what was interesting is I was getting ready to hit him, and all of a sudden, that moment that I had that conversation with Mr. Oyata came right back into play. Just all of a sudden, and I just took a real quick look around, and there was probably about 20 kids under 10 who had just gotten out of a basketball game across the street. And all of a sudden I thought about this. If I hit this guy and that gun goes off, one of those kids may die. And that's a potential real outcome of this. And so instead of doing that, I don't know what I did, but I got his attention. I got his eyes on me. And I told him, I'm like, buddy, I wouldn't do that. It's not worth it. And it was almost like it it just kind of jolted him. It snapped him back, and he put his gun back in his shirt, and he left. Now some police officer say, well, he may have gone somewhere else to rob it. Well, you know what? Here's the other thing. Maybe he just needed a little encouragement. Who knows what he needed? I don't know.
Right.
But I think
at least it wasn't somewhere where a bunch of like elementary schoolers were.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I guess I thought about the overall consequences more so than what, I could have done to this guy. And here's the thing. Will one kata teach you that? Will one training method, will one art teach you that? And it goes back to how the instructor prepares you.
Right.
And it goes back to what one of the things I mentioned in the last podcast is like, if you're not willing to do what's in front of you, how are you supposed to take care of things in life?
And literally can be applied anywhere.
Right.
That small lesson doesn't get applied. And I think that comes down to life experience too. About older people seem to understand this a little better than the younger folk. But the more I get older, the more you kind of see that, where it's just people. Could you imagine if you were maybe 20 years younger, right? In that, and puts you in that situation again.
Oh yeah.
Would you have just tried to jump the guy?
Oh, there's no doubt I probably would have. There's no doubt I probably would have jumped the guy. I probably would not have had the wisdom to kind of step back and give myself the time to really give me the right option that I needed for that. And I look at hey, what's being taught? What is actually being taught in the different schools? Would somebody try to run behind the counter and literally cower, or would they try to take the person out, or would they, just try to do what I did, try to snap the guy out of it? Let's not make a bad decision here. Let's move on with our lives,
Diffusing situation, and I think that's a common theme that has been put out there in the common thought stream of martial arts, where it's just diffuse. If when possible, take action when necessary.
Right.
But when you know how to take action, like a lot of people with the supposed masculine fortitude. Oh, they're going to take action. We're not going to stand for that around here. You might have an instructor who would have just said go for that. I think we know people. I think we know people who would have said go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I see where they come from, but what's going to save you the time? So, but that guy could have reacted differently. You didn't know he would have walked away.
Right. Or I mean,
you might have had to take action then.
Right. Exactly. So, I mean, I don't know if that was the right thing, but getting back to fighting systems and stuff and making them work. It was another story I've got. Several years ago, I had this guy that I worked with, and show me this and show me that. I got a buddy who does this and buddy does this. Oh, jeez, shut up. I just want to do my work and go home. I really don't want to entertain your fantasies of BS. I really didn't care. And so finally, one day, it was like over Christmas holiday and stuff. And he goes, I was talking to this guy from this place, and he was like, I tried to put him in this chokehold, and he didn't do anything. He just said, "Well, you need to stop, otherwise I'm going to kick your knees out." And I just kind of looked at him, and I'm like, "Okay, entertain me here a little bit, because now you got my curiosity, and actually we're on a break. I'm not working on any projects. Okay, show me what this guy was doing." He goes, "Well, this is the hole that I had him in." And I'm like, and I told him, I'm like, "It would be physically impossible for him to actually kick your legs out." He goes, "Why?" And I'm like, "Because you're leaning on him. As soon as he lifts his leg, you're going to drop him down on the ground. It's not going to work." "Oh, wow." He goes, "Well, how would you get out of it?" And I'm like, "All right, here." And just to shut him up, all I did was do a flea bite right by his, funny bone. And if it's just a small, when it's like a second or third grader little pinch, you just rub your fingers up and you twist. And we used to call them flea bites here, and I don't know what they're called everywhere else, but we always call them flea bites. And it's one of those pinches that it kind of hurts, but it's more eerie. And it's like, just leave me alone.
Right.
And sure enough, he was putting it on, he was starting to put a choke on me halfway decent. It was still not great, but in the meantime, I'm not going to hurt him and get fired in the process whenever I show him this. And he just let go. He goes, "Oh my, that wasn't any karate." I'm like, "Well, you let go. Who cares? I don't care." It's like, that's what self-defense is. It's like,
It was karate.
yeah, it's karate.
Like if it works, I mean, like it's your hand. Like literally, te karate, empty hand. It literally was your empty hand doing a technique. Ergo, it is karate, and you do karate. Ergo, it is karate.
Yeah. So, and I think that leads up to, I think that really encompasses a lot of what we're talking about, how you make it your own. Little things like that is what really drives things to be your own technique. Like, one of the things that I do, and one of the things that I've figured out now, I'm 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 a pretty big, stout guy. And one of the things, like, if for some reason somebody butches up on a technique, especially armbar or any tuite,
Right.
you've been around me. What's one of the things that I do?
Slack.
Huh?
You slack.
Well, I guess you haven't been around me too much lately, but remember, one of the things that I'll just kind of, I wouldn't say it's drunken monkey technique, but I just kind of accidentally bump into somebody.
Oh, right.
I'll just get them off base, and it's nothing. You don't see that technique in any kata, just bumping into somebody. But I guarantee you, if I can bump into somebody to where they're not paying attention and butching up, guess what? About 85 to 90% of the time, guess what? That technique's going to work after I do that, because basically I've taken that away. And that's one of the things I had to learn for me to make some of these techniques work.
Well, and that goes back into, well, I learned the kata and I saw the technique, so instantly it must come out. You had to practice that, and even if you had to, and if you don't practice that, then it's not going to work for you. And if you don't practice it in like with someone maybe being a bit of an A hat, um, butching up or whatnot, or not being compliant, which I think in certain situations you gotta work with.
Yeah.
You're not gonna know, oh, this is how I'd react to that. Oh, this is how I would go about that. It's also having the wherewithal to see how someone else might do it, and hey, that's better than what I'm doing.
Right. And
or that's more complete than what I had in mind.
Right, exactly. And everybody's got to figure out what what's something that they can do to make these things work? Because there's never going to be an optimum situation. Never.
Not if if you start fighting somebody, it's not an optimum situation.
Yeah, if it gets to that point, it's never an optimum situation. But even when you're training, you got people that are gonna, how do you say, be less than cooperative. And sometimes you'll run into people that will, oh, well, I know this and I know that. Oh, who cares? Who cares what you know? You know, let's work together. Let's try to make things happen. Oh, well, I know that. Who cares? Who cares?
Well, it's not what you know, it's what you can do.
Huh?
It's not what they know, it's what they can do with what they know.
Right.
They can't do anything with what they know. Like, and that goes into the kata, where it's like, 50 katas. It's not gonna matter if you can't make any of them work. And
Right.
and even then, if they know, they have the knowledge of Bonkai isn't enough. They need to be able to apply it, and they themselves cannot apply it, and then what's the point? This is why our particularly like some of the stuff we've been doing, kind of rolling back to it, has burnt out. Not because it doesn't work, it's because we have a bunch of people who depended on one person who could make it work, as opposed to having a legacy of people who could by themselves make it work.
Right.
That's going to another round.
Yeah.
Save that for all.
And what's funny, because for a while, I on a handful of summers, at the summer camp and stuff, I would get to assist with certain parts of training or part of the testing for different black belts and stuff. And it was really interesting because you could see people, you could see where their training was at. You could see where it was basically, okay, I'm running through a checklist in order to get my belt, or was it they were actually learning the stuff?
And sometimes that's their fault, and sometimes it wasn't.
Right. And sometimes one of the things that I would do is I would pick up somebody that I thought be open to might be open to maybe learning something a little bit more, because they had kind of a good grasp of what they're moving to and how they were doing the kata. Maybe they were looking for something more, and sometimes it was good, sometimes it was quite confrontive, and I just have to tell them, like, well, okay, you can learn or not, it doesn't bother me one bit. So
And I think the conclusion we're coming to is that if you don't need a whole lot to make something work. But if you're trying to make something work, you need to try to make it work for yourself.
right, absolutely.
So that's to kind of make it to kind of come to a summary of what we're trying to say. I think that might work. So
Yeah.
And even now, like we were talking before, I'm trying to kind of put something back in my head that we worked on 3 years ago, but that doesn't necessarily mean that this is going to be the basis for anything. It's just kind of an extension, which is good in itself as well. But having an extension of something to kind of push yourself is different from needing to grab onto something new. And I think if people can get to a better point in their training where they see it more in that vein than trying to constantly, search for the next new thing, because we might have a better martial arts community.
Yeah. And going back to it depends. I mean, some people, it's been interesting. Like, I've seen some people where, they only learn one weapon and they're satisfied with it.
They're good with it.
And they're very good with it. Me, one of the things, one of my little deals was I wanted to know what each of the at least one kata from each of the weapons in our system. I that was just me, and to me that provided a lot of value because I saw a lot of different things, and from that I was able to see the design in a lot of katas where sometimes you wouldn't see that perspective from different people or from people that didn't learn all those, or they just wanted to learn one, and it wasn't a bad thing. It was just you saw that perspective.
Right. You're getting to see how the lines are traced and not just tracing in the lines.
Right. Now, do I do all those kata all the time? No, but I can relate. I can understand where things are coming from, and I can see the design of it. So, and that's me. So, and that's something that I needed for me to make things work. So, but anyway.
No, that makes and that leads into that's gonna what makes it right for you.
Right.
Knowledge is an important. When we're in no way saying here, don't learn more stuff. There's
Right.
nothing wrong with that. It's just you have to understand the limits of it, and you have to understand why you're doing it.
Exactly. And
Cool.
and sometimes you don't even know why you're doing it. There are times I didn't know why I was doing it, but I was like, okay, do,
Well, be smarter than us, and
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
have a better idea of what you're doing.
yeah. Don't do some of the stupid stuff I did. That's for sure. I'll tell you that much. So anyway,
We got
but
to have
cool.
an episode of that being like, what are the dumbest stuff we've done as martial artists?
Man, unless you're going to do a 24-hour podcast, I don't know if you're going to fit everything.
One or two stories, but oh god, I remember some. There's some stuff we could do with that, but anyway,
Well,
what are you working on this week?
um,
In terms of training and whatnot, kind of maybe wrap things up a little.
um, I, I'm going to go back. I'm going to be going back to psi and stuff, and as I mentioned before, I've tweaked my knee pretty good, so I'm going to be kind of taking it a little bit easy on my knees and try to get them back to, because my one knee is pretty swollen. So, but I'm gonna I'm gonna be working on psi again and just kind of going through that and just really doing some more analysis and where I think I need to be with that and see if there's any tweaks I need to be doing with that. So
Cool, cool. I have to kind of run around a little this week, but this week I'm trying to push myself more on kind of the physical aspects. Thankfully, my knees are not at the swelling level yet, so I'm gonna try to make 5 days a week of running, um, as well as just try to get the general calisthenics just more in, as opposed to just doing. Because I think I've got a decent base of stuff I do on a regular basis, but I want to up the ante.
yeah,
So I had Achilles tendonitis come and go, but now that I live in a country where I can go to the doctor a little more easily, they're just like, yeah, you're fine, and just if something hurts, just take it, just relax.
yeah.
So, but yeah, I think that we got to a really good point with this conversation, and set up a little more for next time. Anything you want to close with, Jeremy?
You know, no, I think I'm pretty good. I think yeah, this went pretty well tonight. So very cool.
Cool. All right, folks. Well, don't forget to keep on training, and we will see you whatever time we see you in. Later.